one lady took her Amazon package, like took it apart to a big cardboard sign and wrote "Putin is a war criminal" in red marker on it. And I was just like, I don't understand the mindset that
What would
like
compel
like
you
you
to do that? Why
yeah,
are
it's like you
you?
took your Amazon package and you ripped it apart and you got a crayon or whatever, and then you taped it to your like $2 million house's window. I'm just like, what's
I
going
kind
on?
of love it. I love when
what's
they
happening here?
like overnight swapped out the BLM signs for Ukraine
Yes.
flags. Like
Yeah.
you would change your
Right.
like seasonal holiday decorations, you
Yeah,
know?
you're right.
It was
Yeah,
like very
yeah.
cute. Can I ask you
Right.
like a gun control question? Why is everybody so
Sure.
pent up and pressed about gun control? Is it because gun control is like the ultimate proxy for certain taboo underlying issues that you may have encountered scrolling your For You tab and reading
you know, that's
certain anons?
Well, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why I'm answering.
I don't know
but
anything
No,
about
I-
gun
I think it's
control,
just-
but it seems like
Oh, it's so simplistic.
The government can
it's like
kill you, so you need a gun to protect
It's-
yourself
it's-
against them.
it's a meme. Well, so what do you mean gun control? Like pro gun or anti gun control? Which one? Or both?
both, but
Okay.
specifically the libs who think that all of the active shooter and high crime issues in America boil down
Right.
to the availability of guns.
Well, it's a lot easier to say that than it is to be like, oh, maybe people who are plugged full of hormones are going to shoot little kids to death, like in cold blood. Or maybe, the fact that Adderall prescriptions went up by 40% in the last 3 years has some really chaotic and weird effects on society. Or also maybe weed is bad because,
Oh my
by the
God.
way,
Weed
so
is so
I'm on,
bad.
It is. It literally is.
I'm
a
on
gateway
record.
drug.
I am on record as anti-weed, and what I
You
always
would be,
point to
Saagar.
is I have been for a long time is Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland shooter, in his plea, in his testimony. The last thing he says is, "I'm sorry, everyone." He's like shaking. He's like, "I was smoking a lot of weed at the time."
Well,
Parkland
He actually
shooter,
blames
Nicholas
weed
Fuentes.
for the.
I'm sure you've read that tablet article about how like weed is the new opiates that came out, like
Yeah.
where the levels
I
of
actually did
the
read that.
levels of THC. I'm a
Yes.
stoner, so this affects me personally. The levels of THC are so high that they're like causing
Correct.
especially young men demographically to have psychotic
schizo.
breaks. It's like
Yes.
triggering their like
So I was Berenson pilled before COVID because Alex Berenson, wrote a book called Tell Your Children about weed. He wrote it in 2019. To date, it is the best book on, and he's one of those people who's like, look, you can be pro legalization, but here's what you need to know about high THC weed that a bunch of young kids are smoking and will cause a certain part of the male population to go schizo and go violent. You should just accept it. Like that is
it's
part of
Post.
like being pro weed. And okay, like that's fine. I don't, by the way, I don't think anybody should get thrown in jail for smoking weed, but it's one of those where we don't talk anyway. They don't want to talk about any of these things. It's just easier. It's not like guns haven't been part of America's fabric for decades. So they're like, it's the assault weapons, even though the assault weapons ban was in place when the very first school shooting happened, Columbine. Nothing has changed. So even the way I did a whole deep dive on this, the way that the feds classify mass shootings is bullshit. Obama changed the definition for any gun crime where 3 or more people are killed.
Oh, I thought it
okay.
was 4 or more, but whatever. I guess that's
They
splitting
dropped it.
Okay,
It was
okay.
4. Now we went down to 3. Obama went from 4 to 3. So what is that? So first of all, obviously the data is going to tick up after that, after Newtown in 2000, I think it was like 2013. But second, what are the vast majority of crimes where 3 or more people are killed? They're 2 things, and they're both horrific. One is gang violence, so gangs shooting each other. The other are husbands basically having psychotic breaks, killing their entire families, and then killing themselves, which is really fucked up.
Musu.
And like that is what the vast majority of
Right.
quote mass shootings are. And then also gun deaths. They're like, there have been 80,000 gun deaths in this country. The vast majority of gun deaths are suicide, specifically suicide for men. It's men who shoot themselves in the head. Men are 4 times more likely to successfully commit suicide than women, mostly because they use deadlier methods.
Good for them. Hey, good for them.
This
Because they don't want to be
is a good thing to.
caught.
this is a good thing
They
to talk
really
about with
mean
you
it.
guys.
They
I've-
really
mean
want
it.
to.
Yeah, they don't wanna be safe.
I've never
obviously-
understood this. Women who try to attempt suicide do so while minding their own aesthetics.
Mhm.
You know, like,
Well,
and
they're
this-
doing it
look,
for attention.
Yeah,
That's
they-
why.
this
They
is
wanna
really
be
dark
rescued.
to think about,
Yeah.
but like they always go for the pills. They always go for like the slitting the wrist. Like there's something about like maiming the face, which women find like very abhorrent when committing suicide.
It's
Like
just-
people who are it's really odd. Anyway, so
You're
That's-
gonna want that.
that's why
open
men-
casket funeral as a woman.
I think if you're slitting your wrists, you're doing a gesture, basically. Like you can, if you really want to die, like,
Yeah.
you are kind of, you're risking your
Right.
life. Yeah. To make a
yeah.
suicidal
All right. So
gesture.
anyway, men dramatically commit more suicide than women, at least successfully, 4 times more likely to shoot themselves. Even so, I just saw some bullshit stat. They're like, oh, like gun deaths amongst children has risen, which makes you think it's school shootings or accidental gun deaths. Nope. And again, this is really fucked up. Vast majority of cases, it's parents killing their kids.
Oh my God.
And it's like, it's like people are losing their fucking minds in this country. It's not about guns. And the other thing is about assault.
Well, speaking of,
go ahead.
murder,
Go ahead.
suicide, I think one of the best understood, well documented reasons men snap and kill their families is because they're in a lot of debt. It's often a
Yes,
financial crime,
yes.
not like a psychotic break.
Makes you think.
I'm glad you said that.
Mhm.
Actually, it's like you're right, which is one of the contributing factors. Often is like, I can't provide anymore. I can't take it anymore. I'm just going to take everybody out with me. And look, it's horrific. It's really like the more I read about it, the more I became depressed because I'm like, oh my God, like everybody in this country is on antidepressants and Adderall and smoking weed. And I had to throw that in there. And like just listless in their lives and in debt and doesn't have the opportunity to buy a house and is like on a dating app feeling like they hate their lives. And unfortunately there's a lot more violence. And the assault weapons ban thing too. I actually said, I got some heat from this. I was like, I actually think it would cause more crime because what we were talking about, Waco and Ruby Ridge. Do you remember why they went into the Waco compound? It was a bullshit gun charge, which stemmed from gun control. Everyone tries to justify it over like David Koresh was doing. I'm like,
Cult leader,
that's not a legal pretense to go into somebody's fucking house. Like, okay, you can go in for that purpose, but that's not why you went in. Ruby Ridge was the same thing. The feds like suspected him. It was also an entrapment scheme. He got off in a court of law, actually, whenever they tried to try him for like sawing off a shotgun like 2 inches short. Gun restrictions are just pretexts for the feds to fuck with people that they don't like. So I'm against basically like almost all gun control for this reason. I really don't think gun availability or any of that has literally anything to do with the amount of crime that we're all seeing right now. I mean, there's like the conservative meme.
Say literally, right? Because it's the easiest and most efficient way to kill a bunch of people.
Well, I'm saying at this point,
Yeah.
enacting gun control would not have any.
No.
Sure, you could do the Australian model. Like you want to take everybody's guns away, then yeah, that'll
No,
definitely
I
have
mean,
an
I
impact.
definitely
Um,
don't, but
like,
I'm just
yeah.
playing devil's advocate.
Also, I think
Sure, I mean-
Because it's
the
it's
weird,
like
like
a social contagion,
schizo
just like
rogue
trans-
people who really want to kill, like school children, will find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Well, that guy in Japan, remember he like went and stabbed a bunch of people. He
The
stabbed like
stabbings
26
are more
people.
common in other countries, but it's easier to stop
Yeah.
a stabber.
Yeah.
It's it is.
Definitely. Listen, very true. But they don't have a Second Amendment, and also they don't have more guns than people. Like we have to deal with the reality of what we have. Like
Yeah.
we have it's a constitutional. This is another thing on red flag laws. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think because I always hear people like, "Oh, red flag law." Imagine the Second
even know what a
Amendment
red
is in the
flag law
Constitution.
is.
You need
Okay,
red
all right. So a
scare
red
law?
flag law. The red flag law is the idea that people around me could be like, Saagar's acting crazy. We should take his guns away. So they can report me to the government, state government, and they would have to prove through like a quasi-judicial process that I am not in my right mind and thus my gun should be taken out of my house. Well, you're basically establishing this quasi-judicial system to take away somebody's constitutional right.
Yeah.
Like imagine Anna, if you were like, Dasha's acting crazy, and you went to a judge and you got 2 or 3 people to testify to
taking
that,
notes.
and they could strip her of her right
Of
to
her
freedom of
bomber
speech.
jackets that she bought on Etsy.
Yeah. You're like, she's lost it. Like, she's with
She's
the
a
bomber
threat to
jackets.
herself. Can you take away her bomber jackets? She
Take
might
away her
fashion
credit
an
card.
Epstein-style news.
Yeah.
Take away her business Amex and give it to me.
Right, exactly. But that's quasi-judicially what you're doing. Like, the gun laws are on the books where if you've been convicted of a crime, then your right to your Second Amendment can be violated. But red flag law is like somebody who has committed nothing. It's like you're setting up a process where, based on somebody's word, they can say like, oh, it's kind of like committing someone to a mental institution. The bar for committing someone to a mental institution is, because that's depriving them of their civil rights, is way higher than some of these red flag laws on the books. All you need is like one psychiatrist to say like, oh, he's not in his right mind, and they'll take it away. And then how do you get it back? Is the guy really, are they ever going to come forward and say, yeah, he's cool now, he can get his AR-15 back? Like, once they have a process, they're going to use it against
The process
you. And
is
so
the punishment.
It is, yeah. They'll take away your gun rights, but they'll sign off on your gender reassignment.
There's something to that, right? Yeah. Like,
I was going to ask you about Israel, but I don't think I want to get